My hotel's as clean as an elven arse.
I played Baldur's Gate for the first time very recently, and my final verdict is that it's freaking awesome. Both Baldur's Gate games. People usually dog on the first one, but fuck it, I love them both. I mean, look at these troll-ass faces, how can you not love it? They were obviously taking this game very seriously. Baldur's Gate 3 was recently announced, and due to it being made by the same studio responsible for Divinity Original Sin 2, I've had my eye on it. I just recently started playing Divinity Original Sin 2, and I'm enjoying it, I think? You may have noticed that I ended that sentence with a question mark. I honestly despise its initial area. I find it very overwhelming, and I'm not a fan of cluelessly wandering in large areas looking for quests that may or may not help me proceed the story. And since I really don't like that confusing map, I'm not too excited about going back. Hopefully it gets better and less overwhelming when I leave the first island. I think my opinion will probably change over time. We may end up having a blast processing episode on that at some point, because some of my other friends love that game with a passion. Speaking of blast processing, we haven't released a video in a while. That's because we're moving shit around. None of us have died. Yet. With the announcement of Baldur's Gate 3, I found an excuse to stop playing it and switched over to these older games, Baldur's Gate 1 and Baldur's Gate 2. And oh boy, I've had enough time to play both games. I've recently started getting into pen and paper games. Cyberpunk 2020 and 2077 was my introduction to the gaming genre, and since then I've been working on campaigns to play with my friends. For reasons that are too long for this video, Dungeons & Dragons is actually my least favorite of all the tabletop games that I've played or studied, the top two being Cyberpunk and Star Wars. But Baldur's Gate has given me more appreciation for D&D's mechanics and world. Due to playing this, I find Faerun to be a fascinating world with many interesting stories hidden within its areas. I understand the classes a lot more and how magic is supposed to work. Although since this game was released in 1998, it's actually based off the advanced second edition of D&D and its overly complicated THACO system. I'm not about to explain how that shit works. Baldur's Gate is a very flawed game, and there's a lot that I don't like about it, but goddamn, I think I love it. I can see the seeds within its game design for hits like Mass Effect, Skyrim, Dragon Age, Knights of the Old Republic, all those classic RPG games when I play this. It has a reputation system that shows if you're good or bad, a vast amount of party members that all care about your actions and respond to certain things that you say or do.
Must we be so insufferably charitable?
Each character has a unique quest that gives them character development. You can romance a super hot drow elf. The second game actually provides housing that reminds me of the castle base in Dragon Age Inquisition. Things happen at random times that are surprising and interesting, and all of this on top of a simple position-based combat system that reminds me of Final Fantasy XII's Gambit combat. And just like Final Fantasy XII, it's a lot more addicting than it looks or sounds. All of these features are things that we see in today's games. I'm not sure if this is the game that did it first, but goddamn, it's very early in the genre.
It's about time. Then why do you bother me?
How's the combat in the game? Well, you do nothing. Nothing at all. You kinda just click the button and watch them go. On paper, watching people fight for you sounds like the most boring game ever. But when you are the one putting time into getting equipment and setting up your stats for success in combat, it feels very satisfying. There is gratification when you equip armor on a character and watch them run into battle without taking any damage. But if you were to just look at it, it is kind of underwhelming. It's kind of funny because the music is way more intense than what it actually looks like. Or sometimes I'll just be playing and I'll be like, oh hell yeah! And then when somebody looks at the screen, it's just boring nonsense. At first the game is pretty simple and you'll do just fine by throwing your party at enemies. But there are times when aggro needs to be controlled. You need to send tanky people in the rooms first, then throw everybody else in. Sometimes you'll need to set up your magic for certain cases where your party can get confused, poisoned, or even petrified. I fucking hate that confusion. It's like the bane of my existence. Don't even get me started on petrification. I'll admit that I kinda cheesed through a couple of these fights. Some of them are ridiculously hard, especially that final boss. You've got to abuse that pause button for quick situations and maneuvers. Instead of jumping into a situation, you may want to pick them off one by one and drag them into an ambush. Each character specializes in certain abilities, so the way you would approach certain situations would be vastly different than others. It's a party-based game where you control everyone. And just like the Gambit system, it has an AI that allows the NPCs to fight for themselves without you having to really do anything, but sometimes you want to turn that off. You don't want your mage to start trying to fist fight because they ran out of bullets. But just like Divinity Divinity, it's very difficult to play without a walkthrough unless you are fine with spending hours gaining nothing for the sake of exploration. The walkthroughs for these games are like my freaking Bible. I personally like my games with a bit more railroading. Some people would say that railroading ruins the experience for these kind of games, but I just don't have that kind of time anymore. But surprisingly, I didn't find Baldur's Gate as hopeless as Divinity. For the first half of the game, I knew what quests I needed to do to proceed the story. You would think that an old game like this would be very hardcore, but I think it's much simpler in every way. When you first start playing, the game is in no way overwhelming. I mean, look at how underwhelming Candlekeep looks in comparison to the books. Oh, that's cute. You have simple tasks that are easy to follow. You meet Gorion, go to the Warrior's Inn, go to the Nashkel Mines. You can literally just walk there from the beginning, but you probably don't want to. Leveling up is very exponential, so you definitely want to level up a bit before going there. And I love how this game does what I call the Fallout New Vegas design. I'm sure there have been other games that do this, but I don't know them. Basically, if you were to look at the map, you could see this giant mysterious city in the distance, Baldur's Gate. But the main story has you going the opposite way. By doing this, a player gets a bit more excited about the prospect of getting there. It's not just a city, it's a goal. Players of New Vegas probably understand what I mean. New Vegas is a mysterious glow in the distance up north, but the beginning of the main story has you going south instead. Baldur's Gate finds a good balance between giving you a goal and discovering events and scenarios. You don't have to explore, but goddamn, it helps a whole lot to check everything. At the beginning, your level matters. At the end, your equipment matters. The game is damn near impossible to beat without obtaining good equipment. But what I love the most is that good items are actually easy as fuck to find via side quests and exploration. They hide some mandatory objects in the middle of certain maps to easily just pick up and grab. You can get one of the best axes in the game on chapter 2 by killing some fairly easy mini-boss. By doing this, the idea of your characters only being as good as your equipment doesn't feel as painful, and it promotes exploration with the idea that a good item could be right around the corner. And there isn't that many good items to begin with. This may sound like a bad thing, but honestly, a thing I hate about today's games, especially in the RPG genre, is the surplus of weapons where you always find something better than what you've just obtained a few hours or even minutes ago. In Baldur's Gate, that isn't the case. Many items you find are useless if you don't have a member that is proficient at it. This gives value to finding anything that is magically boosted. A +1, +2, or +3 is a great find that could last you until the end of the game. One problem that I had was not understanding how its stats and mechanics work. Character creation is what separates the men from the boys. The game is much easier from min-maxing. I've had to start the game over countless times because I unknowingly botched character creation. You gotta keep clicking that reroll button. Gotta keep clicking it! On my first playthrough, not only did I mess up character creation, but I skipped a bunch of equipment and got a lot farther than I should have. Let me explain what that means for a second. There are 7 chapters. I got to chapter 6, and I had to start all over from scratch. All of my characters were getting petrified instantly without a means to try to stop it from happening. For those who have played, they probably know what I'm talking about. On top of this, I really didn't understand THAC0 or the AC system of 2nd edition D&D. So I took a step back, buckled down, and studied how that crap worked. And on my second playthrough, I easily 1v2'd the bastards to oblivion. Get fucked! For those who don't know, D&D is played by a dice rolling system. A lot of it has to do with luck. So when you fight someone on this game, they'll just start wailing at them. They just start wailing. But behind the scenes, there are rolls that are happening. These rolls determine whether or not you hit or miss the opponent. And in my opinion, this is one of its flaws. Most of the issues that emerge are issues that I have with D&D as a game. Just like real D&D, I absolutely hate how much luck is involved. In something like Cyberpunk, if you put points into something, you ain't failing that shit. However, I think that the randomness factor works a lot better in a pen and paper RPG game than it does in a video game. The randomness of D&D can create some pretty compelling and interesting scenarios, while in a video game it's just frustrating. There are battles where I will restart after instantly dying or getting confused, then not change my strategy and win without getting hit. It also has that Persona type bullcrap where the game is over whenever the main character dies, although this mechanic does have more of a point in regards to its story. I won't go into the story as much for spoiler reasons, but the second game is really when Baldur's Gate shines. Due to not being a writer, I can't quite put my finger on what makes Baldur's Gate 2 more compelling. It could have to do with the familiarity with its design and characters. Seeing the characters that I traveled with in the previous game almost brought a tear to my eye.
These bonds will not hold my wrath, butts will be liberally kicked in good measure.
But this is where I'm gonna stop, because right now I'm in the middle of Baldur's Gate 2. I really hate that I didn't play these games a lot earlier. I also want to try to beat Divinity Original Sin 2 so we can talk about it on the channel. I'm sure there's a lot of interesting things to talk about. But anyways, thanks for listening, and Baldur's Gate gets a big old thumbs up from me, and I can't wait for the third one to come out.